Hi, I'm Omkar. I'm the founder of Cerebranium. We are a learning analytics company headquartered in Berlin, Germany. And we are starting this podcast with the theme of learning to learn, to speak to experts around the world in the edtech space who have been building the future of education with technology and the reach of the internet. So we'll be speaking to a lot of experts around the world, right from India, Pakistan, Europe, the US, South America, and many, many other parts of the world where education is being forged and reforged again. So, in line with this theme, we have our guest today, Mr. Fahad Tanveer from Edkasa from Pakistan, who has been working in the space of education in Pakistan for the last 6 years now, since 2016. So before I introduce anything else, I think Fahad would be the right person to actually introduce all the work that they have been doing, in the education space. So I'm not going to take away the spotlight from Fahad. I think I'll let Fahad explain, the things that he's been doing along with Edkasa, along with the team in education. So Fahad, I'll let you take it from here and, have a short introduction about you, the team at Edkasa, and the mission at Edkasa.
Hi, thanks for having me. Actually, that's very kind of you. And I wouldn't call myself an expert. I think we're all learning as we build the future of education, and that's the whole point, right? Going forward, it's all a learning exercise. We're all lifelong learners. So I'm Fahad. I'm one of the co-founders and the current CEO at Edkasa. Edkasa is Pakistan's favorite learning app, and we are perhaps one of the many stakeholders in the global race to bring innovation to education. It's long overdue, and Pakistan is perhaps one of those places where it's been overdue for a long time, and it has probably been needed the most. Many people might not know this, where Pakistan, being the fifth largest country in the world, is also home to one of the largest education challenges in the world. We have 22 million kids that are out of school, and the ones in schools aren't doing that much better. So the onus to bring innovation in terms of the way we teach, in the way we create access to education, in the way that we improve quality of learning outcomes. And that falls onto us, this generation. Pakistan is also home to 140 million people under the age of 30. So that's crazy. That's 2/3 of the country. So I'm at 37, a really old guy in Pakistan. And I have to build for these young people who want to acquire new skills and want to learn new things, and they want to change the world for the better. So there's a lot riding on the shoulders of Edkasa and many other people who are trying to work really hard to improve the state of education in Pakistan. We started out in 2016, recognizing these kind of things as we grew up, and we realized, we've been very fortunate to have quality education and access to world-class institutes. I studied at LUMS, which is Pakistan's premier university, and then I had the opportunity to get an education at Harvard. So, I kind of took it for granted that, it's just hard work that gets you there, but there's a lot of luck involved if you look at the numbers, being born in the right place at the right time. So I think it's only fair that we create those opportunities for all those people who could probably do better than me if they were given the opportunity. So that kind of is the motivation that drives our company, that create more access for better quality education for people who are generally marginalized, not because of themselves, but just because where they are or what their means are. So as much of the equalization as we can create, I think that more opportunities for mankind to progress. So that's kind of the motivation. We started in 2016 with something really simple. We started teaching on Facebook Live to anybody who wanted to take from the morning 7 a.m. to the afternoon science classes, right? Like anywhere in the country, you could join our Facebook group and take us. If you don't have a school, you could learn. And we very soon saw schools signing up. So we signed up 44 schools in our first year out. We had over 600 students in some of the most remote parts of the country. We were their high school. We started seeing the impact that technology and the motivation to do something meaningful can make happen, right? So and that kind of the story took on from there, and we felt, how can we reach more students and more students, and now we have about 250,000 students using Edkasa services every day, and we're very proud of what we are. But it's still very early days. Like I said, 140 million learners just in Pakistan, eager to learn. we haven't even scratched the surface. So it's early days, it's exciting times, and I think we're going to do something meaningful in this space.
Absolutely. It's very inspiring to hear the journey since 2016 onwards. And like you said, like it's only the beginning. The surface is, being scratched at the moment, and there's so much more impact that, solutions and teams and companies like Edkasa can sort of, augment the existing education system to reach marginalized, parts of the audience who can sort of be empowered with the education that they can now access due to the rise of the internet and due to the rise of the access to education. Maybe one thing that comes to my mind, since you spoke about having access to quality education and increasing or uplifting the quality of education. So what are the factors that you see when you talk about education quality? I think that's something that for me personally as well is a very important topic, but I think also for our listeners who would be very interested to know how Edkasa views education quality.
That's a great question. So, I mean, quality can mean different things to different people, but I think for us, the first hurdle has been access. Not having access to a qualified educator or a teacher, for the lack of a better word, or a professor, is worse off than having access to someone who can actually talk to you about what you want to learn. So this is the first hurdle, and it's a huge hurdle for 220 million kids who are not in school. They just don't have access to a school. So just the first qualitative element that improves their ability to learn is having access to someone who's willing to teach them and is able to do a decent enough job. But the story doesn't end there, because when we look at the global economy and the knowledge economy, the way it's shaping up, being the fifth largest country in the world, we can't afford to isolate ourselves, right, from what's happening in the world. Right? We need to meaningfully contribute. Being such a young population, we're probably even a larger contributor in the generation which is called Gen Z, right? So Pakistan is one of the largest Gen Z populations in the world, and we can't afford to leave them behind in terms of their skills. So when you talk of quality, you want to make sure first that they have access, but then it starts building on going beyond what has been traditionally the bar of what is called education. So regurgitation, the first thing is recreation of knowledge from what you are being taught. That has been the modus operandi for hundreds of years now in Pakistan and this part of the world, and for majority of the world, where kids go to school and they are told what to do, and they're told to memorize things and reproduce them on examinations. I think that is something which is really outdated. It doesn't add much value, and it creates actually more dependence than independent. And we need to create a new way of teaching them how to be independent learners, because there's just no way to do that to such large populations, right? So you can't build the schools, you can't build the teaching armies to even do that. So it has to, the pedagogy has to evolve to make students become more independent in their learning habits. And you already see that, right? Like, so it's not like, the kids are really smart. So they're learning elsewhere, right? They're learning on TikTok, they're learning on YouTube, they're learning in other parts of the internet, because that's what gives them access to the rest of the world. They might be sitting in a small village, but just having 4G internet, and thanks to Elon, maybe even the most remote villages in the world with Starlink, will have access to high-speed internet. They're not confined to my app, all right? They're going to be learning from whatever they can access. And that's really important, because that's creating a generation of independent learners, which are not dependent on admissions to schools or having a school in their village, or they're going to learn these skills whether you like it or not. Now, it's important to curate that experience, right? So make sure it makes a lot of sense, and it is something that they can meaningfully employ to improve the status quo around them, right? Improve the community, the society around them. That is, kind of where Edkasa is trying to go, right? Student success. And what that means is that anybody who comes to learn with Edkasa is able to translate that learning towards some form of success. It may be doing well on an exam, but it may be a lifelong learning journey that they adapt. It may be acquiring a skill that gets them a job or allows them to earn a living. So Edkasa is here to stay, and is here to help millions of young people acquire the skills that allow them to succeed in life, right? And that's kind of how we see quality, right? Like, you measure quality in the way you live, the reason you get an education is that you improve the quality of your life and the quality of the community around you. Otherwise, it's kind of meaningless, right? Like just regurgitating information. So I think that's how we see quality of education, that it is meaningful and it adds for the betterment of the society and the world around the students that we're teaching.
Absolutely. I think tying learning outcomes, like what outcomes is the education creating for the learners, I think is a very important aspect of understanding how or what level of quality does that education journey have. It's a very important point that you touch up on there, Fahad. I think, we at Cerebranium also look at it in a very similar manner. And I think it's great to hear that, there are other platforms, there are other companies, there are other people in the education sector across the world that also look at it this way. When you say outcomes or learning outcomes are an important factor of the quality, that determine the quality of education journeys, what are the key outcomes that Edkasa is working towards? So you mentioned about one of them, which is employability and the ability to get jobs and, of course, perform well at jobs. What other qualitative learning outcomes are you looking at?
Yeah, so the couple of them, right? So first of all, what the status quo of measurement is exam performance, right? So fortunately or unfortunately, that's where or how we measure the quality of the learning outcome in Pakistan is how well you did on an exam, right? And those 4 hours determine how much you've learned in a year. So if you're sick on that day, that really sucks, right? So we want to eliminate the stress of that exam from students and the weightage it has in their lives by making it super easy to do well, right? Like if you use our app, we really spell it out, how you're going to be assessed and how you need to prepare. So we take away the stress of performing an exam, and we try to bring the focus of learning for understanding and for application and hopefully innovation, for some who are ahead of the curve. So I think learning outcomes for us, the first hurdle or the first thing that we have to deliver on is exam performance, right? So that gets us the trust of our students and their parents and their schools, that we're going to eliminate that challenge. And then the second aspect is then, are they able to understand complex ideas and apply them? So, if you're studying, for example, aerodynamics, right? So the way we love to teach those things is that, can you build the best paper airplane in the world? And that's how I was taught in high school by a great teacher. So if you can make a great paper airplane by understanding the fundamentals of aerodynamics, that's better learning than just memorizing the formulas. And then if you're able to build a plane that no one else in the world or people haven't seen before, and it can fly the longest or farthest, that's an amazing find. That's real value added, right? And if that plane is able to do something for your community and maybe pass on messages or do things which you just entertain people, for that matter, it's adding value to a community, right? So there's so many ways that a quality can be measured, but I think the first challenge is going to be exam performance, because that's where we earn the trust. I think that has been the case in markets that are a little ahead of us, like India or Indonesia, where we're seeing that things are moving beyond exam performance now. But the last 5-6 years, when EdTech really started taking on, it was all about earning trust on exam performance. Now that people trust those service providers that, the exams are not going to be a problem. What next, right? Can my kid code and make the next, top game on the App Store? I want to give my kid a chance for that. So those kind of things are going to happen here as well, where we teach for more innovation and allow the talent to absorb the knowledge and then start applying it.
Excellent. I think building that base of trust, like you said, from, in this case, your students and the learners on your platform is extremely important. I think what you mentioned about the parents also being involved as one of the more important stakeholders, apart from the teachers, let's say, is an important aspect as well. Maybe that leads me, to a very natural next question, is what difference do you see between communicating with students and communicating with parents?
Yeah, that's also, once again, I think a great question. So in the case of Pakistan, is where we operate, right? So there are parents who are highly skilled. They may be highly educated, for many generations. so they understand the value of what they're bringing their children to. And then there are parents who have kids who are going to high school for the first time, right? Like that's the first time somebody's gone that far. So it's a completely different world. It's a completely different set of circumstances that families are facing, right? So we have to cater to everyone. And when we talk to parents, we have to guide them in a way that how do you use what we are providing and what is available for learning for the best possible outcomes for your circumstances and your child. That's the key, right? So one fit for all is not the objective. You want to create that differentiated learning experience, right? But somebody, a parent, I've spoken to parents who just went to fifth grade and their kid is going to 12th grade, and it's scary for them because they never went that far, and they want to make sure that their hard-earned money is going to take their kid all the way. And then there are parents who are really crazy overachievers, and they're saying money is not an object. I want my child to have the best possible opportunities. You have to reconcile all of those things. So talking to parents, I think the common ground is that they want the best for their child, whatever that they can do. I think, and as a parent myself, I would want the same for my child. So it's a huge sort of trust exercise to bring them towards trusting a company like us that we're going to help their kids deliver, right? And we can't afford to miss the mark, right? We're just in that position. Like healthcare professionals, educators, have a lot riding on our what we practice, right? So it's really important that we keep our promises and we do our level best to help kids succeed. So I think when we talk to parents, we try to find that common ground, and do we really add value to the ambitions of the family and to the kid? And we don't want to overcommit, but we want to make sure that we guide them the right way, and to make sure that whatever is possible for the kid to do their best, we're part of that journey.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, there's no one size fits all, not even for parents or,
Yeah.
One sort of group of the stakeholders, let's say, that are involved in education.
Yeah.
Maybe as a follow-up question over here is, how do you inspire trust from, let's say, a parent who maybe has only seen education until maybe 5th or 6th grade, and now they want their children, their child to sort of get the best out of education, out of their hard-earned money. So what would be, let's say, an example, or what would be a difference between speaking to someone who has only, been through 5th grade and speaking to someone who holds a PhD, and both of their children are,
Yeah. Very different
exactly.
conversations. Yeah, so I think for a lot of the parents that we speak to, early adopters are always people who have a sense of where things are heading, and they're generally very well educated. So a lot of the parents on our app, for example, are teachers themselves. So they see the value, they know where things are heading, and they want to give their kids that edge. So when we talk to them, it's a lot about how well we cover the curriculum, a lot of feedback that we get from them. That maybe you could have taught this in a different way, and it's great because we're always listening to our end users, and we want to make sure that we build things that help them do their best. So I think it's not just a one-way learning experience for them. We are also learning when we talk to them, and we improve and iterate to make sure we deliver on those outcomes. But in terms of difference, I think for parents who don't have a background in deep education, even at a high school level, I think that the trust comes from focusing on what is best for the student, right? I think when we talk that's something that is a shared language. When I talk to a parent who's trying to send their kid to med school, because that's the ambition of the entire village, that they'll have somebody go to med school, right? And then this kid's gotten to high school and is doing okay, and when you talk to them and you're like, what, I want your kid to succeed too, and regardless of whether you use us or not, this is the way, and we'd love to help, right? And I think over time, when we show and we demonstrate that we're here to make sure your child does best, the trust kind of builds on. It's not going to be quick. It's not a simple I'll call you and I'll explain to you what our product does, and it is a bit of an exercise. And I think we look at it as an investment, because once we have the trust of parents and students and teachers and schools, that this company works for us. This company works to help deliver better learning outcomes. that's where we'll strike gold. We'll be able to do whatever we can to improve the state of education. But if we try to just focus on our goals and not think about our end users, we're always going to be at this sort of tug of war to move forward. So I think it's also a learning exercise for us. For the really super smart parents, I mean, they are like I said, more talking about things like how we could improve pedagogy, how maybe they could actually come and teach in some cases on our platform, and as much as we'd encourage them to in some way give us feedback, and if they are able to give us time. But I think we've kind of scaled beyond that part now. But we do engage with a lot of parents, and we talk to a lot of parents and a lot of students, because we're still in early days. We're still trying to understand how the next generation will learn. So that conversation shouldn't stop. I think it only needs to grow.
Absolutely. I think building for your customers and your biggest stakeholders is, I think, the key to building something that's relevant for the people you're serving as well. I think I couldn't agree more on this statement. Since we're speaking about trust, I think one question that comes to my mind about the trust is, where does this lack of trust come from, in the system? Because, of course, if something as great as Edkasa and the vision, the mission behind it, has to fight so hard for so long to gain that trust, where does this mistrust come from in the system?
I think there's a lot of factors involved, in societies where there's mistrust. We're seeing that, even in things in the last 2 years, right? Like, there are parts of the world where people don't trust the vaccine, people don't trust, the idea to put on masks. And then there are places where, in Pakistan, for example, where we vaccinated a very large population very quickly and have kind of managed the whole pandemic, quite well. So, I mean, the trust deficit, it really comes from past relationships, right? Like how people have had experiences and relationships and how they've panned out over the last many millennia. So it's not you've got to be a student of history to understand the psychology behind how people behave. That knowledge comes, kind of interestingly to Edkasa, because both the founders have been, social science undergrads with political science and history backgrounds. So when we look at people, we know that there are some things that are innately going to be, difficult for them to accept. So a change is one thing that people are skeptical of in Pakistan, right? Like they are afraid of very rapid change. They may like it in terms of slogans, but nobody wants to experience it very rapidly. They want to be slow to the thing. Unfortunately, we can't afford to waste any more time. That's the state of education in Pakistan. So it's a kind of a dance, right? Where what we're trying to do is, keep the pace of change happening, but at the same time, not lose people's trust, not lose the direction, build with them. So it's almost like being, a political leader, right? Like, you've got to take everyone along, but at the same time, accept what you can do and also accept what you can't do. So at this point, I think we've been able to deliver on our promises, and that's the iterative building process. Do something small, deliver really well, then build on that, deliver really well, build on that. And I think that's why it's taken a while for us to get where we are. If we were in, say, for example, Silicon Valley, things could have scaled much faster for us, both in terms of the way you build a venture, but also in terms of customer acquisition and all those kind of things, because the trust deficit isn't as wide, but it is wide in Pakistan. So you kind of are building that alongside building your venture. And my experience in working with different companies, in marketing and brands, allowed me to understand that a little more in a nuanced way. And Anand, working in the public sector, was my co-founder, working with government and large stakeholders in the education space. So we bring that deep insight into building trust, but it comes from history, right? Like, I think that's something that's really important. That's why it's important to be on ground, and it's also important to have the cultural context of who you're building for, because it's not the same. And you can't, even if you are from India, you won't be able to do well in Pakistan and vice versa, because there are things that you can only understand once you're part of the culture. So it's similar but not the same.
Absolutely. I think the local context is extremely, extremely important. And I think, feet on the ground is, like you said, one of the most important factors over here. Great. One of the next things that I wanted to touch up on was how is Edkasa and generally this new wave of education sort of rethinking the relationship between learners and teachers? Because traditionally, the relationship between learners and teachers has been, to put it very simply, a bit of a top-down sort of a relationship. How does Edkasa see this? How are you what's your spin on this?
Yeah, no, I think we look at it slightly differently. I wouldn't call it top down, but I think it has been asymmetrical, right? Like so, you have one sort of dissemination, and you have sort of independent sort of understanding. Students don't know what's going on between students, but the teacher knows, and the school knows, and the board knows, and the college knows. But this is sort of information asymmetry is going for a 6, right? Like as we say in South Asia, which basically means it's going out of the window, because information is now in the public domain because of the internet, because of how you could compare information in a much faster and easier and more public way. So, and it's across the board in every industry, right? It's whether you're in the financial industry, whether you're in any other thing, people can compare information and you figure out things much faster and easier and cheaper than ever before. So that sort of hegemony on access to information is no longer there. I tend to equate this era to the time when you had the Heidelberg First Press, right? Before that, books were stuck in monasteries, right? Because it was very expensive and only few people had access to them. But once you started having the printing press, books became relatively more common, right? And then knowledge started transferring. So education became more transferable. Where this is the second big wave now, right? Because of the internet. Now, I mean, I don't need to go to university to understand how accounting works, or how to code, or how to even fix my car. Those things don't require a vocational technical institute. It requires maybe 10 YouTube videos. So I think that information asymmetry is not going to be part of the equation for very long. What the evolution of that is that you have to be really good at not just knowing things as a teacher, but also being able to disseminate it in a way that is relevant to your students, right? So some students learn better, with the way you speak, or some people learn better with the way they look at information or text, or so you've got to kind of find your ground, right? So I've seen some amazing things done by teachers over the last 2 years during the pandemic on YouTube, on TikTok, to help their students, right? And we're just part of that wave that's coming, where even our teachers are not just teachers. They're not replicating what's in the classroom on camera. They have to be role models. They have to be exciting. They have to be TikTokers, YouTubers, Instagram celebrities, and amazing at teaching physics, right? That's kind of where things are going for teaching, right? Like you have to be that person, and then the world is your oyster, because if you can do that, you can teach anywhere in the world. You could have huge followings and audiences, not just in terms of compensation, but in terms of the meaningful impact you can create around the world. Now, a great physics teacher can literally teach 1 billion people on YouTube, right? So if you're that great and you can help kids understand complex concepts, there's nothing holding you back, right? You don't have to get that job at a school. You could just start with your smartphone and start. And there are great examples that I follow. There's a great YouTube channel called Physics Wala. The guy has literally a whiteboard and himself, and millions of views on every physics concept that he teaches at high school level. He's great. He connects with the audience that he's teaching for. So all I'm just looking at is that there is going to be a natural evolution, and you're not holding captive that audience of 30 students in the classroom. They have options now, right? So you've got to be really good at what you do.
Right, absolutely. And I think since coming sort of looping back to the quality discussion, right? So a lot of the education quality, apart from relevance and outcomes, also depends a lot on quality of content, depth of content, understandability of it, usefulness of it, and approachability as well of content. Because often there's extremely high level material out there that is very valuable, I'm sure, but it's not accessible, even though the PDF or the manuscript is available on the internet, right? So I think accessibility also has that sort of spin on it, that not only is it available just, to view, but also to understand and, consume and internalize. And I think absolutely what you mentioned about a teacher being sort of extremely approachable, being able to have these bite-sized, perhaps, nuggets of knowledge that they can disseminate and sort of have their learners absorb well.
Yeah, just to quickly add to that, this is also a huge opportunity, right? Because traditionally what we do is we do this one size fits all. Like you come to class, you have to prepare this one lecture, and there are kids who are ahead of the curve and below the curve, and they all have to accept your lecture, right? Technology is now allowing you to do multiple renditions, so create that differentiated learning experience, which is the holy grail in education, right? So you speak to the student at their level. So somebody who's going really fast, and there's somebody who's not going very fast, and you can take them along on a certain concept. It wasn't possible previously. Now you can. So for example, you can teach the same concept, and you can make 185 videos on the same concept, but built for different types of learners at different levels, so they can access, and AI can help with matching the content to the type of learner, to the level of learner, and that can allow everyone to kind of come to similar level of understanding and have that differentiated learning experience, which was talked about a lot, in terms of pedagogy and design for the last 100 years, but the technology wasn't there. Today it is. So I don't know what we're waiting for. At least at Edkasa, we're trying to build that differentiated learning experience, but I think there are some great companies in India and the US who are also doing the same thing. But that's where we're going to see things, right? So you will be able to learn at your pace. If you're left behind, that's not going to be a thing. Like I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but if you missed the class, it's not going to repeat itself for you. If you didn't understand something, you're going to move on. You need to get a tutor or somebody to help you. But the teacher isn't going to be able to help you very much. They have to move on to cover the curriculum or the syllabus. That's no longer a problem. I think it's a great opportunity for teachers to build better relationships with students and build for every single student as opposed to a classroom.
Absolutely. I think this personalization of the learning journey is an important aspect of, again, being able to achieve high quality learning outcomes at scale. Because I feel like the technology is there. It's, I think, the adoption of it that can accelerate for these outcomes to be, seen as well within the education sector. That was going to be my next question, actually, about how do you see this scaling? So how do you see, what would you say is the biggest challenge in terms of scaling and growing to reach as many learners as, Pakistan has and will have in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? What would you say are the biggest challenges that you see ahead of you, and how have you thought to address them?
I don't think some challenges are common to building any venture, which is obviously you need the resources to build things. That's kind of getting better in Pakistan. There's more resources available for innovation, for startups. So more VC funds are looking at Pakistan as an opportunity. It's a frontier market. So that is slowly but surely warming up. I think more is welcome. So anybody who's hearing this and has a fund that's looking to invest in a frontier market, hey, happy to talk. But I think that goes without saying, right? Like you need the resources to build things. But the next big challenge is talent, because Pakistani talent is as good as any in the world, and because of technology, it's a double-sided sword. We're losing a lot of our talent to demand elsewhere in the world. People are good. People can get paid top dollar for their work. Holding on to talent in Pakistan is slowly also becoming a challenge, because our top talent is very much in demand around the world, especially in the Valley or any other part of the world where there's innovation taking place. So we'll have to build for that. We'll have to attract that talent on more than just money. and make sure that we take good care of our people. Traditionally, Pakistan has not been very good at it. We've lost a lot of our brilliant people, not just because of money, but I think people were not treated well in the workspace. But that's changing because of people, younger people coming into the employer roles or founder roles, and having spent time in the U.S. or other parts of the world. We see the value of giving a great work environment to our team workers and our coworkers, and the kind of other aspects that you can build in terms of thinking of long-term association, like for example ESOPs. ESOPs have become a very new and real thing in Pakistan. So a year ago there was no such thing as ESOPs for private companies in Pakistan. Today they are. So imagine, like, how do you motivate someone who's super talented with a salary, right? Like you can't do that for very long. So those things are changing, and that's great. But I think the biggest challenges will be financial resources going forward to scale things to the size of market that is Pakistan and beyond. And the second thing is obviously building the great teams. That those go hand in hand, right? So resources to build a team to build the resources to build the team. That's what's going to be.
Absolutely. And I think, it also has a different spin on the traditional term of human resources. Like I feel people are people are not resources, and resources, money, time are resources. But then, you spend, utilize money and time to get people on your team so that you can create value. So I feel that's sort of the new form of the equation here. And as an entrepreneur myself, I totally sort of see and completely agree with everything that you mentioned over there about these are sort of the common bottlenecks for any venture, any company, any scale up that is now growing, has created initial value and is now growing into larger stages. That's great to hear. Do you see any plans to scale outside of Pakistan at the moment, or is that not something that you're thinking of for the moment, but maybe in some time?
You have plans, and then the world has plans for you, right? So when we started out, we thought things that we'll be doing in 2 years or 3 years, they just happen in the first 3 months. So that's exciting, but it's a good problem to have. Pakistan itself is a pretty sizable market, but at the same time, we've seen from other markets a lot of demand. Expats, a lot of Pakistanis around the world. Many of them require similar sort of tools and resources that we provide. So natural gravitation towards a homegrown product, but also from other markets, right? So Pakistan being a pretty significant economy, 25th largest economy with all its shortcomings in the world as well. A lot of other countries look up to us, in terms of education, in terms of access to quality education. So I see a lot of opportunity to export education out of Pakistan. I think we'll keep our skunk works working on side projects that allow us to experiment, and if we find something that's interesting, we'll definitely dive in it. But obviously it takes resources. So the priority still remains Pakistan right now, but we're the kind of people, we keep tinkering and seeing. When we built our YouTube channel, 12% of our viewers came from India. We didn't build for India, but I guess there's really, we asked a lot of the viewers in comments, like, why are you watching our stuff? There's so much stuff around for you guys. And they would say, we just like the way you guys speak, and the way it's so different. They're talking about the same thing. It's just, but you guys speak in such an interesting way. So you don't know why people want to use your product, ultimately. But we'd love to explore opportunities, and ultimately we're competitive people, so we want to make sure that we put ourselves out there and represent around the world. But it has to start with a strong foundation at home. And then take what we have to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. And I think, coming to the topic of your YouTube videos and the comments over there, I had a surprise section for you here. And, we went through some comments on Edkasa's YouTube channel videos. And,
Okay.
I just wanted to go through them, and sort of have your thoughts on it and sort of, really express a bit more how you feel about them. So we took a few examples. Like, for example, one of the comments was, I'll be speaking in Hindi/Urdu, but we'll add some subtitles at the bottom of the video later. मैम आप हमारी बहुत हेल्प कर रही हैं. इस वक्त हम सेकेंड ईयर वालों की ऑनलाइन क्लासेस स्टार्ट हो गई हैं और व्हाट्सएप पे समझाना बहुत मुश्किल है, लेकिन ये सब समझ आता है. थैंक यू वेरी मच मैम. So that was one of the comments that we found on one of the YouTube channels. Um, Another one was, please post all chapters of all subjects in 1 week because papers aane wale hai and my only hope is Edkasa. Please post all chapters of physics as soon as possible. And I think, these are just two examples of how valuable students find, the content and the teaching methods that Edkasa uses. And I think, user love is the strongest currency that, any company, any education provider can hold. So, it's incredible to see. And these are just two examples of so many, I'm sure. And, I can't imagine how it must
Yeah,
be for you day in, day out.
it's really overwhelming. So, it's interesting you picked out these comments from YouTube because when we were a YouTube channel, we were a really small team, and I was the guy replying back to as many students as I could. It's getting a little crazy when we crossed like 60,000 subscribers, but I think at one end, it gives you a lot of confidence and sort of energy to read and hear things like this because like you're on the right track. You're helping people, right? Like you're actually making meaningful impact in people's lives. Otherwise, nobody's going to bother writing stuff, underneath your video. There are billions of videos uploaded every day on YouTube. So that's one side of it. The other side is tremendous pressure. Like, you read that comment out. Basically said the guy's totally relying on us for his exams, right? So I feel like I'm going for the exam, right? Because I have to upload the entire physics for high school, in a couple of days for him and explain it to him, because he's put that little comment there that says, I'm totally dependent on you. A little bit of pressure there, right? So and now as we have built out our own app, if you read some of the comments on the Play Store, it's amazing. The kind of places we're reaching. My customer success team, they call hundreds of kids every day, and the kind of conversations we have. There are people whose kids are, whose parents are, Supreme Court judges, and then there are kids, who are sitting in a village next to the border, and they're like scolding us that you better not shut this app down because my kid is super dependent on this. There is no school for 2 villages, and you have to listen to all that, and it's exciting, but it's a lot of pressure, right? Like you're setting up great expectations for a whole generation of millions of learners. So it's a lot of responsibility. But we at Edkasa look at this as this is what we signed up for, right? Like we don't accept status quo in what is education, and we signed up to change it, and now we're changing it. So what are we complaining about? Just buckle up and let's do this. So that's kind of how we think about things, and the comments are super interesting. We love sharing them in office as well. I think it's just a small reflection of the kind of interesting things and interesting people we get to vicariously meet through comments.
Absolutely. I mean, I think your smile tells everything, right? Like it's such a genuine smile of, yes, like positive reinforcement, hope, a bit of nervousness perhaps, like you said, because, it can create, let's say, that pressure. But at the same time, this is what you signed up for when you started. And I think, having it is, it's the biggest dopamine hit that I guess an entrepreneur and, in the social impact sector can actually have. So I think that's excellent. And it's lovely to see, this impact that you're creating. Maybe the last question for this session, and it has more to do with you as an entrepreneur, for maybe some other budding entrepreneurs who may be, in the audience listening to this podcast. So what are 3 key pieces of advice that you would give to any entrepreneur, budding or current or past or future?
Wow. I already feel way beyond my years if I'm giving out advice. But I mean, take whatever I say with a pinch of salt because it's not like I've lived my life. I'm still 37, still an old guy in Pakistan, but not that old. I think from whatever I've experienced, I can only share that. One, it's harder than it looks. If you're signing up to be an entrepreneur, it's not. I mean, don't do it because you don't want to have a boss. Don't do it because you think you're going to get rich. Don't do it because You want to impress others. Do it because you believe in something. I think if we didn't have that as founders, that we didn't believe in what we're trying to do, and we don't believe that what we do adds meaningful value, it would be really hard to continue this. There's a lot of things we could do and live a much easier life. But that conviction in that we don't accept the state of what education is in Pakistan and perhaps around the world, it gives us sleepless nights, but it also gives us the energy to get up in the morning and accept a lot of things that we normally would not accept the status quo in our lives. It's a lot writing, right? So I mean, one thing that we all have in finite capacity is time, and if you're giving away 10 years of your time or longer to a cause or to a purpose like building a venture, you better believe in it, right? And it's going to tell. For the first thing that we had to convince so many people in terms of investors and supporters and early angels was that we're not going to run away from this, because they're like, look, you're taking on things that the government of Pakistan has not been able to do. Are you crazy? Like, you're going to run away to your really nice job in Wall Street or somewhere else, and you're gonna forget about this in 2 years. And we're like, no, we really want to do this. And 6 years on, I think we're here, all right. And now people are saying, hey, this might be real, and they're growing and they're doing this. So you have very strong reasons for doing what you're doing. That's one. I think number two would be to build a team that you love. Like, and you guys, my co-founder is my wife, so I come there and there by default. But the other people that have joined us, along the journey, they're great friends. They're really smart people. We've challenged them to like crazy levels. Made them do things that they would never do. And the only reason I think they put up with us, and everybody, we put up with each other, is because, we know that we're working towards, the same goal, right? It's not the salaries, it's not the equity options. It's like, we all think education status sucks and we need to fix it, so we'll put up with your crap. Because there's going to be a lot of crap. You're gonna have a lot of, like what we say in South Asia, sardi garmi hogi. Like, you're gonna have a lot of rough times, and it's okay. You need the team that's gonna stand strong with you as you build this crazy venture. So make sure you pick your team really wisely. They should be the best possible people that you can find and you can trust, and who are in it not because of you or me. They're in it because they believe as strongly in what you're trying to build as you do. So that's number two. Number three would be to make sure you have more resources than you think you need. Right. So we bootstrapped for a long time, and we figured out things how to survive for a long time, because we didn't have things like early stage funds when we started out, or angels that took edtech very seriously, or tech at all very seriously. But things are getting better. And I think in other parts of the world, if there are people listening from Europe or in US, and that might not be a problem for you, but take what you can as quickly as possible, and don't worry about things like dilution and all that too much. And the reason I say that is because somebody is putting faith in your idea to build a venture that you believe in. I think they've taken a commitment that's way beyond the norm, right? So they're giving you the capital that they have. Take it and do what you can with it as best as possible, but take more than you need, because you're gonna come across new questions, new challenges, and then you're gonna think, I should have raised a little bit more. So you're always gonna need more resources and not just in terms of finances, in terms of your network, in terms of the team you build, in terms of everything that you surround yourself with, the peers that you surround yourself with. Try to invest as much as possible in all those things, right? Your network is probably going to be the most powerful thing that allows you to succeed. So if you're building it right now, if you're at grad school, undergrad, even high school, try to make a lot of friends, and friends with people who are smart and successful potentially, because they're going to be your strength as you go and build out your ideas. So I think these three things are things that have helped us a lot, and I think I've seen a lot of other people benefit from them as well. So yeah, those three things would be my advice.
Great. I think all three are excellent points, and I think I can personally, as an entrepreneur myself, vouch for all three of them, very, very strongly myself as well. Great. Thank you so much, Fahad, for, putting up with us in this podcast. But it's been incredible to see, things that you've shared, and, a bit of a perspective, and, a bit of a quick recap of the journey, and, a slight slice of how the future ahead looks for Edkasa, looks for you, and looking at all the great things that you've been doing in terms of partnerships, in terms of student impact, in terms of the relevance and the quality of the learning outcomes that you're achieving and you will achieve also going forward. I'm really excited to see and have this podcast episode with you, and it's lovely to have you on the podcast today, and thank you again so much for your time.
My pleasure. It's been super exciting to be part of your conversation, and we're just starting out. We need all the prayer, love, and support that we can get. It's a big vision that we're trying to hit, and it's early days. So keep us in your faith, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Hopefully we will. And that concludes this episode of the Learning to Learn podcast from Cerebranium. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening, and speak to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.